They pull you in with incredible intensity, then suddenly pull away. Is it a game, or is something deeper happening beneath the surface? For many avoidants, physical attraction and sexual chemistry feel far easier to navigate than emotional intimacy. This is not because they lack feelings, or because they are incapable of love. In fact, many avoidants experience emotions with remarkable depth. The difference is that physical connection often feels safer than emotional exposure. Desire allows them to experience closeness while still maintaining a sense of control. Emotional intimacy, on the other hand, requires them to reveal parts of themselves that they have spent years protecting. When an avoidant is strongly attracted to someone, their passion can be intense, captivating, and unforgettable. They may appear confident, expressive, and fully present. During moments of attraction, they can become surprisingly affectionate, attentive, and emotionally available. This often creates a powerful first impression. Their energy feels genuine because it is genuine. They are not pretending to be interested. They are simply operating in a space where vulnerability feels manageable. The challenge begins when the relationship starts moving beyond attraction and into emotional dependence. Physical desire is often focused on the present moment. Emotional intimacy asks deeper questions. It asks for trust. It asks for consistency. It asks two people to gradually lower their defenses and allow themselves to be seen completely. For someone with avoidant tendencies, this process can feel far more threatening than they consciously realize. Many avoidants learned early in life that relying on others could lead to disappointment, criticism, rejection, or a loss of personal freedom. Whether these lessons came from family experiences, past relationships, or emotional wounds, the result is often the same. They develop an unconscious belief that maintaining independence is the safest way to protect themselves. As adults, they may crave connection, while simultaneously fearing the vulnerability that connection requires. This creates a fascinating contradiction. Sexual attraction allows them to feel close without fully surrendering their emotional defenses. It offers moments of connection that are intense but temporary. Emotional intimacy is different because it slowly removes the walls they depend on for protection. As a result, an avoidant may pursue someone enthusiastically at first, feeling energized by attraction and excitement. Yet as the emotional bond deepens, they may begin to experience discomfort they cannot easily explain. To the other person, this shift can seem confusing. They may wonder how someone who appeared so passionate could suddenly become distant. But from the avoidant's perspective, nothing necessarily changed about the attraction itself. What changed is the level of emotional exposure. The closer they feel to someone, the more they become aware of what they could lose. How much influence another person now has over their emotions, and how vulnerable they have become. This is why avoidance often creates some of the most intense chemistry people ever experience. Their desire is real, their attraction is powerful, and their connection can feel deeply authentic. Yet beneath that intensity exists a hidden tension. One part of them wants closeness, affection, and connection. Another part remains alert, watching for signs that intimacy is becoming too deep. As long as attraction remains separate from vulnerability, they can move toward connection with surprising confidence. But when emotional intimacy begins demanding openness, trust, and dependence, the internal conflict that has always been there starts to emerge. As attraction deepens, an avoidant often finds themselves entering emotional territory that feels increasingly difficult to manage. In the beginning, the connection may feel exciting, energizing, and even liberating. There is curiosity, anticipation, and the thrill of discovering someone new. At this stage, they may appear fully invested. They initiate conversations, seek out time together, and express affection in ways that leave little doubt about their interest. To the outside observer, everything seems to be progressing naturally. Yet beneath the surface, something else is beginning to unfold. The more they care, the more vulnerable they become. While most people view emotional closeness as a source of comfort and security, avoidants often experience it as a source of internal tension. The feelings themselves are not the problem. In many cases, they genuinely enjoy the connection and value the person they are becoming attached to. The problem is what those feelings represent. Strong attraction creates emotional significance. Suddenly, another person has the power to affect their mood, influence their decisions, and occupy their thoughts. This level of emotional investment can feel unsettling for someone who has spent much of their life relying on self-sufficiency as a form of protection. What began as attraction slowly transforms into something deeper, and with that depth comes a growing awareness of emotional risk. They may start noticing how much they think about the other person. They may feel disappointed when communication slows down, or unusually happy when attention is given. These reactions are normal in developing relationships, but for an avoidant they can trigger discomfort. Dependence of any kind may feel dangerous because it challenges the sense of control they have worked hard to maintain. As a result, they often become caught between opposing desires. One part of them wants to move closer. They enjoy the connection, appreciate the affection, and imagine what the relationship could become. Another part begins sounding an internal alarm. That voice warns them not to become too attached, not to need someone too much, and not to allow another person to gain too much emotional influence over their lives. This internal conflict can create noticeable changes in behavior. An avoidant who once seemed completely present may suddenly become less responsive. They may need more space, spend more time alone, or become distracted by work, hobbies, or personal goals. Sometimes they convince themselves that they are simply overwhelmed or busy. Other times they begin focusing on minor flaws in the relationship that never seemed important before. These behaviors often serve an unconscious purpose, creating emotional distance before vulnerability feels overwhelming. What makes this dynamic particularly confusing is that their withdrawal does not always reflect a loss of attraction. In fact, the opposite may be true. The stronger their feelings become, the more exposed they feel. The more exposed they feel, the stronger their instinct to regain emotional safety. This creates a cycle where increasing closeness activates increasing fear. Many people assume that love naturally reduces fear, but for avoidance, love can initially magnify it. The relationship becomes meaningful, and meaning creates risk. The possibility of rejection becomes real. The possibility of heartbreak becomes real. The possibility of losing independence becomes real. These fears often operate beneath conscious awareness, influencing behavior in ways they themselves may struggle to understand. What appears to others as inconsistency is often a battle taking place entirely within them. They are not simply deciding whether they like someone. They are wrestling with what it means to truly need someone, trust someone, and allow themselves to be emotionally seen. And for many avoidants, that struggle grows stronger precisely when the connection starts to matter most. When emotional intensity reaches a level that feels overwhelming, many avoidants instinctively begin creating distance. This reaction is rarely planned or calculated. In most cases, it happens automatically, driven by a deep need to restore a sense of emotional balance and personal control. To outside observers, this shift can seem sudden and confusing. One moment they appear deeply engaged, affectionate and interested. The next moment they seem distracted, unavailable, or emotionally disconnected. The change can feel so dramatic that it leaves the other person wondering what went wrong. What is often misunderstood is that this distancing behavior is not always caused by a loss of attraction or affection. In fact, it frequently occurs because the connection has become emotionally significant. The avoidant begins to realize that the relationship matters more than they expected. They find themselves thinking about the person more often, caring about their opinions, and becoming emotionally invested in the future of the relationship. While these developments are often welcomed by people who are comfortable with intimacy, they can trigger anxiety in someone who fears becoming too dependent on another person. For avoidance, emotional closeness can create a feeling of losing control. The more attached they become, the more vulnerable they feel. They may begin noticing that their mood depends on the relationship, that they are affected by another person's actions, or that they fear disappointment in ways they did not before. These experiences challenge the self-reliant identity many avoidants have built over time. As a result, distance becomes a way to regain emotional stability. This distancing can take many forms. Some avoidants become less responsive to messages or calls. Others immerse themselves in work, personal projects, or hobbies. They may suddenly need more alone time or become unusually focused on maintaining independence. In some cases, they begin emphasizing personal space, even when nothing obvious has changed in the relationship. These behaviors are often attempts to reduce emotional intensity rather than end the connection entirely. At the same time, many avoidants experience confusion about their own reactions. They may genuinely miss the person while pulling away from them. They may crave connection while simultaneously feeling trapped by it. This contradiction can create an exhausting internal struggle. One part of them wants reassurance, affection, and closeness. Another part feels compelled to protect itself from the risks that intimacy brings. Because these competing desires operate at the same time, their behavior can appear inconsistent or contradictory. As distance increases, avoidants often experience temporary relief. The emotional pressure eases, and they regain a sense of autonomy. They feel more in control of their thoughts and emotions. However, this relief is usually short-lived. Once the intensity fades, many begin missing the connection they stepped away from. They remember the warmth, comfort, and excitement that the relationship provided. This can create a cycle where they move closer when they feel lonely and move away when they feel overwhelmed. For their partners, this pattern can be deeply confusing. The mixed signals make it difficult to know where the relationship stands. Moments of genuine closeness are followed by periods of emotional distance, creating uncertainty and frustration. Yet from the avoidance perspective, the distancing is often an attempt to manage emotions that feel too powerful rather than a deliberate effort to hurt someone. The deeper the connection becomes, the stronger this urge for control can grow. What looks like withdrawal is often an unconscious strategy to reduce vulnerability. Instead of facing the discomfort of emotional dependence directly, they create space between themselves and the source of those feelings. In doing so, they regain a sense of safety, even if that safety comes at the cost of the very connection they secretly value. One of the most difficult aspects of being involved with an avoidant is the emotional confusion that often develops over time. In the early stages, the connection can feel incredibly powerful. The avoidant may appear attentive, passionate, and genuinely invested. Their interest feels sincere because it is sincere. They may communicate frequently, seek closeness, and create moments of intimacy that feel deeply meaningful. During this phase, the relationship seems full of possibility, and the emotional bond grows naturally. The confusion begins when this warmth is interrupted by periods of distance. Without warning, the same person who seemed eager to connect may become harder to reach. Messages become shorter. Conversations lose their depth. Plans become less frequent. Emotional openness gives way to emotional restraint. For the person on the receiving end, this change can feel shocking. They struggle to understand how someone who appeared so invested could suddenly seem so detached. What makes this dynamic particularly challenging is that the avoidant's actions often send conflicting messages. Their behavior suggests two completely different realities at the same time. On one hand, there are moments that clearly communicate affection, attraction, and care. On the other hand, there are periods of withdrawal that create doubt and uncertainty. The partner begins asking questions that never seem to have clear answers. Do they care or not? Are they interested or losing interest? Do they want a future together, or are they preparing to leave? Because the answers are rarely obvious, many people become trapped in a cycle of overthinking. They analyze conversations, replay interactions, and search for explanations. Every warm gesture feels like proof of the connection. Every period of distance feels like evidence that something is wrong. This emotional back and forth creates a level of uncertainty that can become exhausting over time. Human beings naturally seek consistency in relationships. Consistency creates trust, security, and emotional safety. When affection appears unpredictably, the mind becomes highly focused on obtaining it again. This is one reason why avoidant relationships can feel so intense. The uncertainty itself becomes emotionally consuming. The partner often spends more time trying to understand the relationship than simply enjoying it. Ironically, may not fully understand the confusion they are creating. From their perspective, they are responding to changing emotional states. When they feel comfortable, they move closer. When vulnerability becomes overwhelming, they step back. They may assume their need for distance is temporary and harmless, unaware of how dramatically it affects the other person's sense of security. As a result, they often underestimate the emotional impact of their behavior. This pattern can create a powerful emotional bond that feels difficult to break. Moments of closeness become highly valued because they are not always predictable. Each return of affection brings relief and hope. The partner believes the distance has ended and that stability is finally arriving. Yet when withdrawal happens again, disappointment follows. The relationship begins to feel like a series of emotional highs and lows rather than a steady progression toward deeper trust. Over time, the unpredictability can leave both people feeling misunderstood. The partner feels neglected, confused, and emotionally exhausted. The avoidant feels pressured, overwhelmed, and unable to explain their conflicting needs. Neither person may intend to create pain, yet the cycle continues because the underlying fears and patterns remain unaddressed. What started as a promising connection gradually becomes a relationship defined by uncertainty, where affection and distance exist side by side, creating an emotional experience that is as compelling as it is difficult to navigate. At the heart of avoidant behavior lies a conflict that many people never fully see. While others may focus on the distance, inconsistency, or emotional walls, those behaviors are often symptoms of a deeper struggle. The avoidant is frequently caught between two powerful desires that seem to pull in opposite directions. One part of them longs for connection, intimacy, and companionship. Another part fears the vulnerability, dependence, and emotional exposure that genuine closeness requires. This internal battle can make relationships far more complicated than they appear from the outside. Most people assume that when someone wants love, they naturally move toward it. But for avoidance, wanting love and feeling safe with love are often two very different things. They may deeply desire affection, understanding, and emotional connection. They may dream about finding someone they can trust completely. Yet when those possibilities become real, fear often enters the picture. The closer they get to receiving what they want, the more they become aware of everything they could lose. This fear is rarely obvious. Avoidants do not usually wake up and consciously think, "I am afraid of intimacy." Instead, the fear often disguises itself as other concerns. They may convince themselves that they need more space, that the relationship is moving too fast, or that something feels off even when they cannot clearly identify what it is. Sometimes they focus on small imperfections and magnify them into major problems. Other times they become restless, emotionally distant, or uncertain about feelings that once seemed clear. To the people who care about them, these reactions can be incredibly frustrating. Partners often feel as though they are trying to build a relationship with someone who keeps stepping backward every time progress is made. Just when trust begins to deepen, distance appears. Just when emotional security starts to grow, uncertainty returns. The partner may believe they are doing something wrong, when in reality they are witnessing an internal struggle that has little to do with them personally. The avoidant is often fighting a battle between desire and self-protection. They want connection, but they also want safety. They want intimacy, but they fear dependence. They want to be understood, but they hesitate to reveal the parts of themselves that need understanding. This contradiction creates enormous emotional tension. Every step toward closeness can feel like a step toward risk. What makes this especially difficult is that both desires are genuine. The avoidant is not pretending when they express affection, and they are not necessarily pretending when they seek distance. Both impulses come from real emotional experiences happening at the same time. This is why their behavior can seem so contradictory. They may miss someone while avoiding them. They may love someone while struggling to fully commit. They may crave reassurance while resisting the very closeness that reassurance requires. For many people, maintaining a relationship under these conditions becomes emotionally exhausting. Relationships thrive on trust, consistency, and mutual openness. When one person is constantly navigating an internal conflict between connection and withdrawal, stability becomes difficult to achieve. The partner may feel responsible for solving problems they cannot solve. The avoidant may feel pressured to meet emotional expectations they are not yet prepared to handle. The greatest challenge is that no amount of attraction, chemistry, or affection can resolve this conflict on its own. Intense feelings may bring two people together, but lasting intimacy requires something deeper. It requires the willingness to face fears that have been hidden for years, to recognize the protective patterns that once served a purpose, and to gradually learn that vulnerability is not always a threat. Until that happens, the avoidant remains divided between the life they want and the fears that continue to hold them back, creating a relationship dynamic that many people find difficult to understand and even harder to endure. The mystery of avoidance is not that they don't feel enough. Often, they feel far more than they know how to manage. Their sexual intensity is real. Their attraction is real. Their longing for connection is real. but so are their fears. If this video helped you understand yourself or someone else a little better, leave a like and subscribe. Thank you for being here.